Hey, welcome back. Joe Gilder here. Let's dive into this mix. Want to? Okay. In the last video, we set everything up. We have yet to listen to anything. A couple of quick things for you to know on how I approach this. So this is where we're getting to the static mix. This is where I'm going to spend as much time as I need just moving levels around, moving panning around until I'm happy with the raw tracks. To me, this is the essence of the mix right here. One other thing I forgot to do is, remember in the last video they gave me the their mix? Forgot to import that. So let's do that so I don't forget. All right, so this is their mix. We'll make this red, and I will mute it and turn it down. I just have it there in case I need it. In fact, what I usually do in this scenario is I put this way over here on the side of my mix, and I route this to a different set of outputs. It doesn't really matter what those outputs are. It's a different set of outputs that won't run through my mix bus processing once I have it there. So if I want to switch over and hear their mix, I can. Although it doesn't even look like it lines up, so we'll figure that out at some point. But I've got it in there. It's muted. I'll actually mute. It's muted and turned down. I think we're good with that. Okay, so everything above that is R. Everything above that happens to be the tracks for this session. Grammar, schmammer. So what I'm going to do is hit play and start kind of pulling things in and setting some levels. A couple of things to note. One of the things I like to do is definitely keep my main buses here, my subgroups, at 0. I don't touch those for a long time, if ever. And then ideally, I would like for these faders to stay at 0 as well, okay? Meaning, and I've explained this before, but the idea is if the bass comes in too loud, I can do this, right? I can turn the fader way down until it's at the right level. But now, even the tiniest adjustment to the fader is like a 6 dB jump. It's hard to get any fine control there. Versus if I keep it here and make a tiny adjustment, we've not even moved a dB yet. So there's more resolution up here on the fader than down here. That's just how it works. So if the bass is too loud, I will come up here and you'll see me actually turn the bass down. See how that's jumping down? I've got a keyboard shortcut that allows me to jump it up and down by 3 dB. Now, if you see it jump, now, so on the other end of the spectrum, if you couldn't see that before, this is what it's doing. On the other end of the spectrum, if the bass is too quiet and I find myself having to reach down here and crank the volume all the way up, well, same deal. I can't go any louder if I need to, and if I need to, then I've got to go make a bunch of other changes. So again, I like to keep it right around 0. If it's way too quiet, what you'll see me do is this. I'll hit the normalize button, which is just a keyboard shortcut that takes the bass to as loud as it can be without clipping, and then I'll usually bring it down from there. The reason I do that instead of simply just grabbing and turning it up and down is I don't know at what point I'm clipping, right? That's turned up by 27 dB. There's a good chance that's probably too loud. So if I bring it back down and then I normalize it, which I think I already have, then I've totally jacked up this bass track. Then I know that, how do I unnormalize it? I've gone too far. Anyway, then I know that I've made it as loud as possible, and then I can bring it down from there, and I know it's not clipping. That's all I'm trying to say here. Let me see if I can unnormalize. Okay, I've turned normalize off. It's now back to where it was when I brought it into the session. So if you see something jump in volume like that, that's what I'm doing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to bring all the faders down. So the last thing I want to do is, if you're listening intently, I blow your ears out with the very first note that comes in. So we'll ease our way into it, and we'll just I'll spend a lot of time just moving things around. So I probably won't be talking as much because I want to listen, honestly. Like, this is a client mix, so as much as I want you to learn a lot, my number one priority here is to make this mix sound good for the band Sunday Muse. So that's what I'm going to do. A couple of other quick things. The metering over here, Studio One allows me to have K-system metering. So I set it to K20, which means the average mix level is basically 20. The 0 level here is 20 dB below clipping. And which means if I have my average level right there, I've got plenty of headroom without having to worry about clipping my mix bus. So between keeping an eye on this and also, just as I mentioned in the last video, I've got my volume knob set in the right spot, I know that if I get the mix up to a level that feels good, there's a good chance it's hitting around 0 on that meter, which means it's going to hit my bus compressor when I turn that on at the right spot, which means it's going to sound right here and I'm not going to be clipping and all will be well with the world. Okay, I'm going to stop yapping, turn off my mic, and bring this stuff up, and we're going to listen to this song for the first time. This is cool. This is the most exciting, not the most exciting part, one of the most exciting parts for me, because I've literally not heard this song, and we're about to dive into this and make it great, and I'm excited to get to know the song. So here we go.
Try and hide nor fear. Your lips may lie, but I know your soul tells every truth it holds. Come in all of your ruin. You've carried enough from all that it has been. Cease the need to be a prideful king or queen, having control, looking for the fool's gold. Wandered off, lost and gone astray, tried to find a way to go, but oh, just come home.
Doors to keep it in or out. There's room for you in me to fill every crack between. Tear down the walls I have built and empty out all I've tried to fill. So cease the need to be rightful king or queen, having control, looking for the fool's gold. Wandered off, lost and gone astray, tried to find a way to go, but oh, just come home. For the fool's gold, wandered off, lost and gone astray, tried to find a way to go. Oh, our ships have cast away, drifted out, but the lights guide us home.
Wow, what a cool song. This is going to be epic. Okay, so we've listened through once, we've set levels. There's plenty of more level setting and playing around to do. A couple of things I learned while listening. First of all, guitar 1 is an electric, like a clean electric. Guitar 2 is an acoustic, and then mandolin. So we've got 3 different things. I kind of like that. And I forgot that there's 2. So the last song we did, Caitlin is the lead singer for the entire song. And I've met Caitlin and Ben. I haven't met the rest of the band. So the other guy, I'm so sorry, other guy. Your name starts with an H because it's in the file. I just can't remember your name. I'll find it out. Maybe Hayden? Anyway, I don't know. So he starts off. So there's 2 lead vocalists, which is a fun, cool little challenge, which means these other 3 tracks here are the background vocals that come in at the end, okay? So I need to, basically, you may have seen while I was working, I've got a bus for her vocal, a bus for his, and now we'll make a bus for these background vocals because they'll be processed together. I'll EQ them, reverb them, all that together. Also, I need to think through how I want to, it's upright bass, by the way, which I'd forgotten about, which is so good. Upright bass is great. It just doesn't have a lot of sustain. So you kind of hear it come in and out a lot. So I think compression is going to be our friend to be able to hear it well and hear it, to know that it's an upright bass and to hear that clearly and to hear all the notes because he's doing some cool stuff in there that I only heard a little bit of. So we'll have to deal with that at some point. And we also need to figure out how we're going to do bussing on these. So guitar 1, unless I'm just an idiot, I'm pretty sure guitar 1 is like a... It doesn't really matter. It may be an acoustic. It just doesn't have any brightness to it. And it kind of makes it sound kind of interesting.
See,
But maybe it's an electric. I don't know for sure. Doesn't matter. What we're going to do is we're going to call this just for my sanity, we'll call this the guitars bus. They sound totally different, so it's probably just going to be used for volume. I may not do any processing on here. And then mandolin has its own bus because it does have a different tone to it for sure. So I still like that idea. Real quickly, before we dive in too far, I got to kind of figure out what's going on with these drums. So obviously the floor tom, F-tom, F-tom, is our kick drum-esque sound. Okay, we got that. And then I've got these 3 tracks, and I'm kind of exploring this along with you, so I'm not entirely sure what it is either. SNT, SNR, SNB. I assume SNT is snare top, SNB is snare bottom, but then SNR sounds like snares. I don't know what it is. So let's just figure that out. Okay, it's very quiet. Oh. So that's got the clickiness of it, which these other 2... Interesting. I don't know. Let's go to a louder part of the song. Okay, so I may ask Bob, it seems like the SNR might be the snare sound that they bust together. And then the SNT and SNB is just the snare top and snare bottom mic. That's my guess. So one quick thing we're going to do is to make sure the snare top and bottom, if you may recall from other videos you've seen, snare top and bottom are going to be necessarily, just because of physics, out of phase with each other. So if you don't flip the polarity while you're recording it, you have to do it now. So we're going to listen to just those 2, and I'm going to use this mix tool plugin, which has an invert phase, or which is technically polarity button, and see which way sounds better. So let's do that. Let me zoom out a little bit. Okay, has a lot more low end with it flipped. So as you can see, this waveform, let me zoom in so you can see it real good. The snare top waveform starts by moving down. The snare bottom starts by moving up. That is the definition of out of phase. It's also a little bit behind, so it's not going to be completely. But you can see this wave goes down, this one goes up. So there's a lot of stuff being canceled out. By flipping the polarity, that sounds a lot better. Next thing we're going to do is listen to that with the floor tom and see if... inverting the floor tom one way or the other sounds better or worse. There may be a tiny difference there. I'm not hearing much of a difference. I thought it sounded a little better flipped. I don't hear a difference. I'm going to leave it alone. Yeah, so then let's just listen to this other snare track by itself real quick. Yeah, I don't quite know what the SNR track is, so I'll find out from Bob. But I'm digging the actually, you know what? I'm going to text him right now. Let me pause the video. Hold please while I text him. And we're back. We'll see if he replies. My guess is it's a mixed down version. I mean, ultimately, it doesn't matter, right? If you just found these tracks and you don't have access to them, you just got to figure out how you're going to use them. I mean, I kind of like that snare bottom. It could be a snare sample.
Cease the need to be a prideful king.
I mean,
Cease the need.
it sounds better on that side stick thing for sure. So we're just going to leave them all in. You know what we'll do too, just to make sure these two sound okay together. Let's listen to the two together, and let's flip the polarity of the other snare just to make sure those are sounding the best they can. Let's go to a bigger section. It has more kind of muddy low end when it's flipped, or when it just normally. But looking at the waveform, it looks like it goes down with the top snare, so we're going to leave it alone, okay? We'll leave that alone, and we'll say we're just happy with that. Okay, so I don't know exactly what these are. I'm going to bust these two, the snare top and bottom, together, and we'll just call that S for snare, and then we'll just assume this is kind of a secondary snare sound, and we'll figure it out. But those are kind of some of the mysteries I need to solve a little bit, or at least understand what's going on and what I want to do with them once we get out of this. So I'm going to listen again and put some markers down while I'm listening, while continuing to adjust volumes and levels and getting a good static mix.
Come a little closer here. No need to try and hide nor fear. Your lips may lie, but I know your soul tells every truth it holds. Come in all of your ruin. You've carried enough from all that it has been. Cease the need to be a prideful king or queen, having control, looking for the fool's gold. Wandered off, lost and gone astray, tried to find a way to go, but oh, just come home.
Well, I am a cluttered house, locking doors to keep it in or out. There's room
For you in me to fill every crack between.
tear down the walls I have built, empty out all I've tried to fill. So cease the need to be your the fool's gold. Wandered off, lost and gone astray. Tried to find a way to go. Our ships have cast away, drifted out the raging waves of unknown. But the lights guide us home.
All right, cool. So you may have seen me look down. Bob did text me back. So he says the other snare, the SNR track, is a separate snare. So the guy has two snare drums. He's playing kind of the side stick on one and maybe the more proper snare on the other. So he plays them at different points in the song. So they're two different instruments, two different microphones. It's kind of nice to to know that. That's helpful. So that's very cool. I don't know if I would have known that. Although it did seem interesting that the side stick was coming through so much louder here than on these two. So I don't think I would have arrived at that conclusion, but it's nice to... I'm glad we didn't delete it. You know what I mean? Okay, so let me give you some thoughts. Obviously, it clipped there at the end, started to get a little too loud. So I'm just going to... I brought all the faders down a little bit. There's some instruments that are just jumping out more. Vocals need, they jump up and down in volume. Some, there's some mid-range stuff in the guitars that I need to address to get them a lot cleaner. And then the bass needs to be tamed so I can hear it more clearly. And the drums, obviously, we're kind of still trying to figure that out. But as far as thought processes so far, setting levels is a pretty obvious thing, right? We just set the levels to get a good balance. Panning is interesting. I remember the original email from Bob said their original mix had the guitars panned left and right, and I believe the mandolin panned up the middle. Hold on, let me go find that email just to be sure. I'm like a time travel master. So interesting. So the guitars were panned left and right, about 50% each way. The mandolin was panned right. They had shaker and tambourine panned a little bit opposite each other. And then the vocals, none of them up the middle. That's interesting information that they seem to have liked that approach. Because I would probably put them both up the middle or maybe just slightly off to the side. They had them 40 left and right, the lead vocals. That's something that we'll have to kind of think about. But my thinking in listening to this is, first of all, this guitar one plays throughout the entire song, okay? So we could have it off to the left, but it's an entire verse and chorus, which I forgot to put markers down, sorry. Entire verse and chorus is just that. And the mandolin comes in just little tiny bits. So having the mandolin off to the side makes sense. But having the guitar on the left for that long period of time, I don't like that as much as having it up the middle, especially once we get to verse 2. Let me put the marker down. Chorus 1. So we get to this turnaround before verse 2. So I'll mark it as turn before verse 2, which is where Caitlin starts singing. We introduce at that point, in addition to, the drums kind of come in for that little chorus.
Come in all of your ruin.
I guess that's more of a pre-chorus. And so that makes this the chorus, maybe.
Cease the need.
Yeah, that's the chorus. So we go through that. The drums are added in. So now, and the mandolin is playing a little bit more. And then we get to the turnaround. We finally introduce that acoustic guitar.
Home.
So I like the idea of if the acoustic guitar is playing sparsely and the mandolin is playing sparsely, they seem to match each other. Whereas the guitar one is playing consistently, seems like it needs to be up the middle to my ears. What I thought was cool is especially when she starts singing, listen to how these two play off each other. To me, that's just beautiful, and it's way better than having the one guitar to just a little bit to the left and the mandolin a little to the right, or having them both kind of in the same vicinity. I like them almost doing call and response with the middle guitar holding down our central part of the song. It's beautifully arranged. I mean, even just looking, the bass comes in. So the bass plays and the guitar plays and the mandolin plays and the bass plays and the guitar plays. Look at that. Here, 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 here. It's a beautiful little way of kind of having everybody have their spot in the song. So it goes right, middle, left, kind of like a beautiful little swirl. Not squirrel, swirl. So I kind of like that. I'm going to leave it that way. If they come back and say they want it differently, I'll say, go watch this video first. The video won't be out when I send it to them, but I'll explain, like, those are my thought processes. And ultimately, they're right. What they want is best. And because they're a band with two, well, that's different. This is my thought process behind the panning of the guitars and bass and mandolin. And then if I keep the vocals up the middle, which is what I'm leaning towards, and they want it to be split, I get that. And it's ultimately up to them. This is one of those types of bands that has two lead singers, so it makes sense that they have some ways they intend to hear it. But I'm still going to probably push. I like the lead vocal up the middle, and we can move the harmonies to the side. So, for example, when Caitlin is singing, we can have his harmony off to the right, and when he's singing, we can have her harmony off to the left. That might be kind of cool. Speaking of that, you may have noticed while that was playing, I duplicated her vocal track and moved it down. Basically, her harmony was a lot louder, and then when she sang lead, I had to turn her fader up. So instead of having to do some sort of automation this early in the mix, I just moved them out. So she only sings harmony. I think she sings lead for the rest of the song. So this is her harmony track that I can turn down, and this is her lead track that I can have turned up. His vocal was pretty consistent, so I'm not going to do that unless I feel like I need to later. But what I can do is see about doing so. Let's see. Her vocal can be panned. Let's go 40 to the left, which is what they had when the two of them sing together. Let's see how that sounds.
Come in all of your ruin.
Whoops. It's kind of nice because especially the mandolin is to the right, and so her voice comes in on the left. So there's a little bit of balance to that kind of right heavy sound that we might be hearing. So I kind of like that. And then when she's singing, we can just quickly automate his voice to go over to the right. So show me panning automation, and we'll just automate him over to the right by the same amount, 40 there. Let's just see how that sounds.
Room for you in me to fill every crack between. Tear down the walls I have built and empty out all I've tried to fill. So seize the need to be your prideful king or queen, having control.
So to be fair, I'm going to listen. I'm going to put her voice over to the left, 40, and just see how it feels.
Room for you in me to fill every crack between. Tear down the walls I have built and empty out all I've tried to fill. So seize the need to be your prideful king or queen, having
I just don't love it. When they're singing together, it has something kind of fun to it, of having them both on the side. But when it goes back to just her, it just feels weird that she's off to the side. That just feels weird to me. And you may think, okay, just automate it so where when she's by herself, she's in the middle, and when they're together, they're out. That feels weird too because now she's moving. And for me, at least, when I listen to a mix, I want the singer to stay put. If they start moving around, it starts to be kind of weird. The one thought I had was on the choruses, we could pan them out and then have them come back to the middle for the verses. I don't love that either for the same reason I said before. So I'm going to leave it like this for now. Harmony will be off to the side. Lead will be up the middle.
seize the need to be your prideful king.
So this is the third chorus. Good.
Seize the need to be your prideful king or queen, having control, looking for the fool's gold, wandered off, lost and gone astray.
ships have cast away, drifted out to raging waves of unknown, but the lights guide us home.
He has an interesting arrangement there. So his vocal starts singing some ooze, but then he starts singing harmony again. So I'm going to fire him from ooze here. We're going to duplicate the track and bring his ooze to a separate track because that needs to be different because these ooze are just different. So here is... Okay, so looking at the tracks here, again, we're just kind of feeling along as we go. The ooze are happening here. There's 3 ooze, 2 from him, 1 from her. We get to this section. Okay, I need to drag this one over more. So, okay, and bring this one to here. So now these O's are all happening together. And then once they start singing that chorus again, or the last half of that chorus. Okay, so what I'm going to do is keep his voice, his harmony up the middle, which is, well, I'm getting confused, which is this one. This one will stay up the middle. This one will pan to the right, along with, I'll move it up here so it's together, along with her harmony. Oh, that's right. Okay, so this is getting confusing. So these two go together. He stops singing, she starts singing, so they will both be panned to the right. And then this one, her first ooh will be panned to the left. Now, I'm going to pan them hard left and right, but I'll bring them back in if they sound too wide later on. But let's see if that just feels balanced at least.
Wandered off, lost and gone astray, tried to find a way to go.
That's cool.
Guide us. Our ships have cast away, drifted out on raging waves of unknown, but the lights guide us home.
That's going to be cool. I hear, not crazy, but some reverb on those, so they kind of fill up the room. I think a plate reverb would be really cool on those. It make them sound even like more than 3 voices. I don't want to go overboard with it because that may not be what they want. They may want it to sound very simple, but they do have multiple voices there. There's more than just 2 singing, so I think there's some freedom there to expand those and make those feel a little bit bigger. So that's cool. I really like where this song is going. I like the simplicity of it. I really like the challenge of making it feel full and big with a limited number of tracks. I already have ideas of what I want to do to the guitars and the bass. The vocals are feeling great already, so it won't be a lot of processing there. I'm super excited. So I hope you are as well. If you haven't downloaded your tracks yet, homestudiocorner.com/MT. You can sign up, get the tracks, pull them in, follow along with me, and mix the song yourself. It's a great way to learn. All right, that's it for this episode. See you in the next one.